Welcome to Mitchell Maths. In this video we are going to go through completing the square. So the first question asks us to express x squared plus 8x plus 10 in the form x plus a squared plus b. What we're looking to do in this question is we're just looking to change this equation, well this term here, and write it in this form here. So it should, if we were to times out the brackets, it should end up equaling the same thing as it does here. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write x plus, and we're going to half this 8 here, and we're going to half that to 4 squared. And the reason we do that is because when you do x plus 4 squared, which is x plus 4, if we multiply out the brackets we get x squared plus 4x plus another 4x and plus 16. And if we add these two terms in the middle together, we have x squared plus 8x. You can see from this that these two terms here, when you half the 8 and put it in brackets to give you x plus 4 squared, that will give you x squared plus 8x, which are the first two terms in this equation. So that's the first step. Put the x plus 8x in brackets, but half the 8, so you get x plus 4 squared. And that will get you your x squared plus 8x. We do have plus 10 on the end, but as you can see from the brackets, we'll get an extra 16. So if we want to keep it the same, because we're adding an extra 16 on from the brackets, we're going to need to take that 16 off. And therefore our answer would be x plus 4 squared minus 6. And for all the completing the square questions, you are going to need to carry out these steps here to get your equation in this format. Right, our next question, solve x squared minus 10x minus 4 equals 0 by completing the square. Give your answer to 2 decimal places. Right, for this question, we're going to do the same as we did last time. We're going to get x, we're going to half this term here to give us minus 5 squared. And we have minus 4. Now, if we have the brackets, x minus 5, then it will give us, when we do minus 5 times minus 5, it'll give us an extra 25. Therefore, we need to also take away that, just to keep the equation the same. Because if we're adding an extra 25 on from the brackets, we also need to take it off. Otherwise, it's not going to be the same term. It's not going to be equal. And then we'll just so we'll write it out like this, minus 29 equals 0. Now the next steps are just to rearrange it to make x the subject. First thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add on the 29 to both sides, which will give us x minus 5 squared equals 29. Then we're going to square root. Now you need to be careful with this part, because when you square root, you don't know whether the square root will be positive and negative. For example, if we think of the square root of 9, that can be 3, because 3 times 3 is 9, but it can also be minus 3, because minus 3 times minus 3 is 9, because when you multiply two negatives together, you get a positive. Therefore, we don't know if the square root is going to be a positive or a negative. And I'm going to add 5 to both sides, which means x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 29. The answer asks us to give it to 2 decimal places. Sometimes it might ask us to leave it in surd form. If it asked us to leave it in surd form, I'd just leave it as 5 plus or minus root 29. And because it's asked us to give it 2 decimal places, what you do is you just type it in your calculator, 5 plus root 29, which equals 10.39. And you'd also do 5 minus root 29, which equals minus 0.39 to 2 decimal places. So those are your 2 solutions for that question. Right, question 3 is find the turning point of the curve on the curve y equals x squared minus 20x plus 37. Now a turning point is where the gradient is 0. And if we think about an x squared graph, it'll look something like this. This is not related to this graph, by the way. It's just a general, sketch. The turning point is this point here. It's either the minimum or the maximum point on a graph. So another example of a turning point, if you had a minus x squared graph, could be this point here. So it's where the gradient changes from negative to positive, or where the gradient is 0, essentially. And as you can see on this graph, that's going to be the point where y is the minimum value. What I'm going to do first of all for this question is I'm going to complete the square. Therefore, I'm going to get y equals. And the first part of the question is just the same as before. I do x minus 10 squared plus 37. Because I've got 10 squared, that's minus 10 times minus 10 would give me plus 100. So I need to take that 100 off to keep it the same. And then I'll just, so plus 37 minus 100 will give me minus 63. Right, so when I'm looking for the minimum point, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make the y value as small as possible, because as you can see from this graph, the y value needs to be as small as possible. Anything from this bracket is good, because this bracket is squared, when you times a number by itself, well, if it's a negative number, it's going to be positive, because when you times a negative by a negative, you get a positive. And if it's a positive, it's going to be also, of course, positive times a positive is also positive. That means the smallest value this bracket squared can possibly be is 0, because it's always going to be positive, whether it's a negative or a positive value. Therefore, I want to make this bracket equal to 0. And the value of x I need to make this bracket equal to 0 is 10, because 10 minus 10 is 0. 0 squared is 0. Therefore, x will equal 10. And when x equals 10, when this bracket is equal to 0, y is equal to minus 63. So if I write that as a set of coordinates, it would be 10 minus 63 would be the turning point. And finally, so this one's a little bit different because we're going to be working with fractions. Y equals x squared plus 3x minus 2. We're trying to find the turning point. So it's a similar question to the last question. We've got y equals, well, when we have 3, we get 1.5. Therefore, it's going to be, I'll write it as 3 over 2 because it's easier to deal with as a fraction rather than a decimal. Minus 2. And if we think about it, well, 3 over 2 squared would be, well, if we times fractions, we just times the top and bottom by each other. So 3 over 2 squared would equal, well, 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 2 is 4. Therefore, it would be 9 over 4. And we can just take it away from 2. And 2, if we write that as a fraction, that would be 8 over 4, because it's 2 whole ones. So we've got minus 8 over 4 minus 9 over 4. Therefore, when we write this out, it could be x plus 3 over 2 squared minus, well, 9 take away 8 is 17. Therefore, we have 17 over 4. And if we look at our brackets, well, to make that bracket 0, we'd need minus 3 over 2. So in our brackets, we'll get minus 3 over 2. And when x is equal to minus 3 over 2, when its bracket is 0, the y would be equal to minus 17 over 4. And we can also write that as decimals if we want. It'd be minus 1.5 and minus 4.25. Right, thank you for watching. Hope you found it helpful. If you want to have some practice questions, please visit www.mitchellmathsandscience.com. I've also got another video going through more advanced completing a square where there's a number in front of the x squared value.